Always great chatting with my next guest. Julian Erosa is going to be back in action. Fernando Padilla, UFC Fight Night, April 29th. Julian, how's it going, man?
It's going fantastic. Thanks for having me on again.
Of course, man. We do this every fight. It's been going for a couple of years now, which is awesome. So you're fighting Fernando Padilla right off the bat. Did you know much about him before taking this fight? Tell me how this all came together.
Yeah, actually, I actually trained with him one time. We went to Orange County and went to Team Oyama, and he was there obviously. And this was like 4 years ago, and we didn't get very much training with me and him specifically. But yeah, we were on the mats together, and I got to meet him, and uh, that's basically what I knew of him. My one of my coaches, Casey Halstead, used to corner him and coach him as well. So we had a little bit of background knowledge of Fernando, but I didn't know that this would be the matchup that they would be asking me to fight. There was other names that I figured they were gonna ask me to fight, and then my manager Jason sent me his name, and I looked him up, and I was like, yeah, let's take the fight. I like the matchup. He's tall, lanky guy like me, pretty similar in that sense, and he seems like a kid who likes to strike a little bit, so I think it could be a fun one.
Let's talk quickly about your last fight against Alex Cacares. What did you take away the most from that performance that you're bringing into this one?
Yeah, I mean, like obviously going out there and getting knocked out, it sucks to deal with that stuff. But I feel like when you're winning fights, you're not necessarily breaking them down as much, and you got the win, you did what you needed to do, so you move on. When you lose a fight, you second guess everything. You're like, oh my god, what did I do wrong? Like, what was going on? Did I do everything I needed to be doing? Was my weight cut good? Was everything, there was things that I could still take away, and actually more things that I took away from the Caceres fight. Beforehand, I really kind of dialed in my weight cut, and it was like about as easy as it comes, or as easy as it's been as of recently. My last handful of fights. And I always get the weight off; it's not a big deal. But I did a few things a little bit differently that helped me out with that. So I learned from that. Got a lot of southpaw sparring in, so I was able to take away a lot from that leading up to the fight. Obviously you're only in the cage for a little bit of time, but there's months that's going into it outside of the cage that you can learn from, and obviously him being a specific stance, being a southpaw, I had to get a lot of southpaw sparring in, so I do take that away as well. And it's one of those things. It was kind of like it was almost like a magic trick. Like he beat me with like a magic trick almost. Like I felt robbed from a fight because hats off to him. It was a great kick that he threw, but it was kind of it was almost lagged, and he was kind of like overthrowing a left hand, and then the kick kind of came out of nowhere. And so it's like one of those things where I wasn't really expecting it. And I don't think you can really expect that in training and recreate that before you go fight someone like that. And that's just one of the things I had to take away from it, was that no matter how much training you're doing, you always got to keep your eyes wide open and be prepared for everything in the cage. And I don't take away that fight that that I messed up. I just it was one of those split second things that happened in the cage, and not wearing shin pads and wearing 4-ounce gloves, anything can happen. So it is what it is. But there's a lot during the camp that I took away.
Let's talk about Fernando Padilla. We mentioned it there. 18 fight vet. What do you know about him now? How do you feel like you match up against him?
Yeah. Like when Jason had offered me, Fernando, I looked him up for, really quickly to just kind of, remember who he was. And, I wanted to take it immediately. There was, a lot of tough guys out there in the UFC, hovering around, the top 20 that, that can be difficult, and I think Fernando is a good, is about as best of an opportunity for me as it could have thrown my way, because, it's his UFC debut. He's been off for a couple of years. His skill sets, I feel, favor mine in the sense that he's a grappler, but he wants to be kind of off his back. He's very aggressive and offensive off his back, but that's not really a position I put people in. I don't take people down and like try to hold them in their guard and do ground and pound until I get caught in a triangle or something. That's not kind of my fighting style. So I think this fight's gonna play out mainly on the feet. He's not like a D1 wrestler kind of guy either. So he's not gonna come in and double leg me and lift my legs above my head. I'm not to say that he doesn't have the ability to, but he's long and lanky, and he's I still feel like he hasn't got that man muscle yet. He reminds me of myself, back when I was his age. I was long and skinny, and I hadn't grown into my body 100% yet. And so I think it's going to take place on the feet. And watching his last couple of fights, 2 fights ago he had with a really short kind of kickboxer guy, and seemed to be like he slowed up as the fight was going on. He was in the first go or the first round seemed like his cardio was in pretty good decent shape, and then slowly started fading out. And I feel like I'm the opposite. I feel like as the fight goes on, I get better and stronger, and so I feel like that's gonna be kind of my key to victory is to drag this in a stand up battle, and really put the paces on him towards the end of the fight.
What do you make of his layoff coming into this? He hasn't fought since May of 2021. You're a guy that's always been pretty active. Do you buy into that theory about, a cage rust, as they say, or ring rust?
I mean, honestly, I don't really know, because I've never really stayed out of the ring for much longer than I think the longest one was after the Peterson fight in Dawodu was like 8 months. But that's probably the longest layoff I've had ever since I've started fighting as an amateur. So, I mean, back when I was 18 years old, I'm 33 now. So 15 years, I haven't had longer layoff than 8 months. And so I really don't know how that kind of feels. I mean, even the 8 months, I was more itching to get back in there, but I think it was because it was that kind of sweet spot of time where, you're more anxious of getting in there, not worried about having the ring rust. But 2 years is quite the layoff, and to come in as your UFC debut against a guy this is my 13th UFC fight. So being under those lights, they do affect everybody in a way, but for me, it's kind of been watered down just because I've done it so often, and I fought the Apex quite a bit. So there's going to be no real nerves in that sense on me. Fighting, you're going to get nervous, and all those things are going to bring the nerves for me. But just being on that stage is not going to give me any extra nerves. And so for him, I mean, who knows? He maybe he's cold blooded and he can go in there and it won't even be any different from him sparring. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out for him, and also it'll be interesting to see maybe his weight cut as well. A couple years off. Hasn't made the weight obviously for a while, and he's probably gotten a little bit bigger. As he's growing up, he's going to get bigger like me. I mean, as the years were going on, 45 has been harder and harder for me to make. So, but I know how it is. I've done it so often and so many times and consistently that I remember. Being off for 2 years, maybe he starts. Doesn't remember exactly the best ways for him to cut weight, and so it'll be interesting to see him get the weight off and just to see how he feels, in the early goings of the fight as well.
And you touched on it there. You do cut a lot of weight to get to featherweight. I feel like I ask you this every, maybe couple interviews, but how much longer do you see yourself competing? Because I still think you're the biggest featherweight I've ever seen in my life. And I only saw you at a distance. You remember the story you were cornering George Alcala for his fight for Rise FC?
Yes, I remember. I do remember that. Yes. Yeah, I'm a big guy, but I've been able to manage it because of repetition, and like I said, just done it so many times that it's one of those things where like I've done it so many times in my head, and I've done it so wrong so many times it still made the weight that mentally it doesn't matter. I could be way out of shape. I could be off, whatever it is, but for some reason I know I've done it on the worst end before that. That I know I'm going to get the weight off regardless. And I've even taken the Sean Woodson fight. I took it on 3 days notice and got we did catch weight at 150, but I got as low as 48.6 or something. So I was only a couple pounds away from actually making featherweight on a few days notice. So I think it's just, the consistency and trying to stay on top of things as well. It's easy to want to cut the corners, especially the week of, man. When you pull all the carbohydrate out, you pull all the sodium out, it's easy to be like, oh man, I'll just have like a couple things here and a couple little things hit there. And just me being hard nosed that last week has really paid its dividends, through the last, couple hours of the weight cut. And I feel like featherweight's going to be where I'm going to be at. But you never know. I mean, maybe I'll dabble at 55 as well, just depending on opponents and stuff. But I can make the weight comfortably, and I can perform the next day pretty comfortably as well without worrying about being too lethargic or beat down from the weight cut. So as long as I can keep doing that, I'm going to keep doing it. Once the fight, once the fighting gets hindered because of the weight cut, then that's when I'll move up.
Training camp. Who have been some of the main training partners for this one ahead of this matchup?
I was using Nicholas Mota again, just because he has, some pretty good, slick stand up, and like I know that he has more power and he's bigger than Fernando, but it has a little bit of a different skill set. But I know if I can take big shots from guys like Nicholas Mota that in sparring and be able to see everything, that Fernando's not going to have, you know, the same skills or the same skills on the feet as someone like Mota possesses. And so I was using him, but he actually bumped heads with somebody and got a really nasty.
I remember, yeah, he's out of his fight. I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, and so I had to find somebody else, and there's this Mexican cat named I don't know if it's his nickname or his real name, but it's Pato. Everybody calls him Pato, and his last name's Martinez. He was on the Ultimate Fighter. Can't remember what season it was, but taller, lankier, 55er, but just loves to mix it up. And I guess he retired. I was talking to him the other day, and he said he had retired, but he just loves to train and loves it. And he told me he'd help me out with sparring, and so I've been using him. And he's one of those guys that it doesn't matter if he's dog shit tired. The guy does not want to give up, and he loves to fight. You could just tell, like when I'm sparring with him, he loves to mix it up, and he's not one of those guys that breaks. And so it's nice to have someone like that I can throw everything at him, and he's going to keep pressing forward. And I think that's something that Fernando is willing to do up until a certain point. And so if I can get someone that can break that point, then the fight should be easy for me.
How's this fight playing out on April 29th?
Like I said before, it's always kind of the same, game plan that I like to have with, the majority of my fights is just kind of just, make it as long as possible. If we can get into the third round, we can get into the later of the second round, that's when I start to shine, the second half of the fight. And so I really want to drag him into deep waters and really just test his lungs. Everybody's tough, everybody's durable, but once you start getting tired, your accolades start to diminish, and your ability to stick to game plan starts to diminish, but not for me. And so I feel like I get stronger and better at that. And so I really want to drag him into the third round. I definitely want to get a finish as well. So I feel like I can get a TKO or a KO stoppage in the third round.
Big fight a couple weeks before you in your division, Max Holloway, Arnold Allen. Who do you think gets it done? I'm sure you're keeping an eye on that one.
Oh yeah, I mean, obviously, watching UFC every weekend is fun. It's my job, so like watching it is always entertaining and fun to watch. But obviously, for the watching featherweights and 55ers and people around my weight class, it's always fun to watch and always interesting to see how the pieces fall with the top 5 and the top 10 and stuff like that. So Max Holloway's always been I've been a huge fan of Max Holloway, and he's been always one of the reasons why I like dog fights. The guy loves to fucking just. I always remember back to when he fought Ricardo Lamas, and the last 15 seconds he was pointing down. They just kind of brawled it out, even though he was, clearly ahead of the fight. Didn't have to risk anything, but just decided to because that was his fighting warrior spirit. And so I've always been a big fan of him, and I would love to see him, kind of redeem himself after losing the title. But Arnold Allen, man, I think that's 10 fights in the UFC undefeated. And I know the last one with Cater was a weird knee situation. So I would like to see that one ran back as well. But it's it's a toss up, man. Arnold Allen, he's very creative, and he's a slick southpaw. It'd be interesting to see how Max Holloway deals with that. But I would say as a longevity kind of thing, I've been a fan of Max Holloway for longer, so I got to go with him.
So on your Instagram, you wearing the Seattle Mariners hat. Do you I know you're a Seahawks guy. Do you follow the Mariners as well?
I don't follow the Mariners
because they're actually good now. Like they used to be terrible for years. I'm a Mariners fan.
I just for me it's just I'm not a huge sports fan in the sense of like baseball, basketball, and football. But if I'm going to root for somebody, I might as well root for the teams that are from my state, which is Washington. So, and I've always worn Mariners and Seahawks hats and clothing that matches that sports just because, or that sports team just because, or those sports teams just because I'm from there. I think it's weird when if I'm wearing like a Houston shirt or something, if I'm not, if I'm not from there. I mean, I guess
I agree. Yeah.
Grown to be their fans, then I get it. But for me, it's like I'm from Washington, and I'm not a huge fan of all those sports. But if I'm going to wear, any of their memorabilia or for any sports memorabilia, it would be from the one from my home state.
You just need to get a Seattle Kraken shirt or something.
Yes. Well, you know what's funny is this guy named Bigelow. He was he had his own show on the radio, but he has he's like the number one Seattle fan. Like the guy's in, like, if you watch the Seahawks, he's in the Hawks Nest or whatever, and he's a big guy, really big guy. But he has a Jeep Compass, but it's all painted on the outside. He's got Mariners, he's got the Kraken on there, he's got the Seahawks, he's got every single Seattle team, from the highest to the lowest, painted on his Jeep. So that guy's about the biggest fan that you could get. And so, he gives me a little bit of inspiration in that sense too.
There you go. You got to go see a Kraken game. I went last year. It's really expensive, but it's just cool to go to that arena because it's like underground. I don't know if you know that.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah. So like you walk like street level and you see like a few windows, and you actually have to take like an escalator to get down to where the actual arena is in the ice. It's pretty crazy.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool that they did it like that.
Yeah. Are you heading back to Washington State at any point? I guess, see how this fight goes, but I know sometimes you like going back for the summer for a little bit.
Yeah, I usually go. Usually it's mostly after a fight. Me and my wife will go back. My family lives there, so it's always nice to visit my family. And so her family lives there as well. We are, she actually was in Washington for quite a bit of time, doing student teaching.
Oh, cool.
She's going to be an elementary school teacher, and so she was there for like actually during my most of my camp with Cacares. She was there, and I was kind of visiting back and forth, and so. We got a decent amount of time over there as of recently. So maybe after this fight, probably not right after, but probably sometime in the summertime, I always go and visit and check it out over there, and a week or two at a time. And but it's tough because when I go out there, the training's not the same, and if I go there, I'm burning the candle at both ends in the sense of like I'm not really working out as much and I'm eating like shit. So then I would really have to move up to 55 if I stay out there for too long. So maybe like 3 or 4 days, week max. I like to get back here and get the training.
And they got to do a card in Seattle soon. It's been forever. For like I know Bellator did a show in Tacoma last year, so it'd be good to see them. Maybe do some stuff out there because they got the new arena for the Kraken. I'm sure the UFC could do an event there. Yeah,
I think the Bellator show was at the Queen. Was it the?
It was, yeah. I was there. I went to it.
I used to fight. I fought at the. Actually, I think it was the new one that they have there now. But I fought the Emerald Queen. I would say the majority. I would say at least 50%, if not more, of my pro fights were at the Emerald Queen Casino. So very familiar with the area, and they have the new arena over there now. So, but yeah, the UFC definitely needs to go back to Seattle, because it's been a long time. And me and Mike Chiesa were like, they need to have a Seattle card. We can get on it, and maybe get some other Northwest guys to get on it and promote it.
I agree. Julian, thanks for doing this, man. If there's anyone you want to thank before we get out of here, any sponsors, any social media you want to plug, I'll give you the last word.
Obviously, I want to thank all my friends and my family, and my coaches and the UFC, you, James, and my management. Obviously, they put me in this spot, and so Iridium Sports Agency and Jason House and all those guys over there, they always do it right. Always hook me up with everything I need before my fight and afterwards as well. So. Thanks to everybody and everybody that tunes in and supports us, even just on these little interviews.